Hey guys, it's Carrington-Russell here. I just wanted to leave a short message to say that I hope you and your family and friends had a fantastic Christmas. And I'm super excited for the new year. So make sure you don't drink too much, but if you do, I also applaud it. I just wanted to say a huge thank you for supporting me on this channel. And as always, I would really love to see if this channel can get any bigger in 2025. I'm really going to try hard to make it the best year yet. So if you do have any particular authors that you'd like on here, please let me know by commenting below. As always, if you can subscribe or like or share, it'll really help this channel grow. And I really do appreciate that support. So Happy New Year, and let's make 2025 our best year yet. Now, let's quickly head over to our new episode. Welcome back, everyone. I'm Kaya Carrington-Russell, Australian award winning author of Kick Butt Heroines and Delicious Men in Dark Romantic Worlds. And I have a very special guest for you today. We are talking to a very well loved author who's known for writing quite a few different genres, whether it be from dark romance to small town romance to contemporary romance. Basically everything romance, which is what we love to see. We are talking to the one and only Penelope Black. How are you today?
Hi, I'm so excited to be here. I'm so
Hi.
excited to chat. I'm very chatty. You should say that right off the bat.
I love that. You're at the right place then.
Perfect. Perfect.
Now, as we record this, we're only one day out from your release for Forsaken Oath. So I'm a little bit curious as to how you're feeling. Are you getting nervous, excited? What's happening?
So I am nervous and also excited. I think it's probably like 50-50 or pretty close to it. And I waffle between them often, sometimes from 1 minute to the next. It's just such a very strange time, as I'm sure you well know, like right before release. I tried to explain it to my husband the other day, and he's like, because I was like, well, I'm kind of nervous. I always think that readers aren't going to like it. Every single book, I'm convinced, even if it's like book three of a very well loved or well received trilogy, I'm like, they're going to hate it. I just know. And he's like, why don't you just think positive? Why don't you just be excited? And I was like, that's great advice. You cured me, bless him. He means so well, but I'm like, it's just something that unless you're an author or very close to an author, it's really hard to sort of encapsulate like this sort of ball of energy. It's like frenetic and excited and a little nervous. And like there's something special about spending so much time creating this world or these characters, and then when you upload or you hit publish, you sort of release it to the world and hope that it's met with open arms and kindness, basically. It's a strange time to be in this zone, so you caught me in kind of a funky mood. We'll see
I
what
love
happens.
the most rawest mood is what we're going into.
Yeah. Yeah.
Your husband's advice because telling any artist of any kind to just think positive of the outcome is probably, it's a beautiful, beautiful advice. But all of us are like, no, sir, no.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm like, I did. That was 5 minutes ago. Now I'm going, oh my gosh, what's happening? Or did I do everything I was supposed to do off my long checklist? It's just, it's wild.
I want to go down memory lane then. So
Sure.
prior to this, you were saying this is about book 16, 17, which is a massive accomplishment. So I would love
Thank you.
to go back to the start. Why you started writing and how you found publishing for the first time.
Yeah, so I feel like it is probably not that unique of a story the more that I talk to different authors and get to know them. But perhaps how I came into it is maybe different. So I I have a background in journalism and specifically in like editing. So I actually was doing like back of house stuff for authors before I started publishing. And I really enjoyed it. I like that sort of, I don't like editing my own books, but I loved editing other people's books. And I love just sort of working, deep diving with authors and kind of doing what my PA and my alpha reader does with me is just like really sinking into it, running ideas by people and sort of helping them, figure out if there was any roadblocks and such. And then um, at some very gentle and kind urging of some very close author friends who were like, you are really good. Like, you should do, why are you helping me write your own books? And I was like, no, 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 I can't do that. And then the pandemic hit, and like so many people, my life sort of pivoted. And I thought, okay, well, let's just take a really big risk, take a giant leap. And I kind of just dove head first. I didn't really know what I was doing. I mean, I took like craft classes and courses and things like that because that's how my brain works better, is like to have that information. But in terms of like marketing and how did like get arcs out to people, I didn't really know what I was doing. I was sort of winging it and hoping I could build a team from there. And so it really fell very organically, or I should say it like came together very organically. And I just really haven't stopped since. Like I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. This is wonderful and delightful. And I just kept really, I was just writing stories that I wanted to read. I'm not saying there aren't other stories out there that are like mine or have similar tropes. Obviously, there are, well loved too, I'm sure. But I continue to still just write these stories that I'm like, oh God, I would just really love to have a like character story about this small town and they're street racers, and like how cool would that, things. That's my next book. So things like that. And that sort of philosophy has served me well so far.
So, how long did it take you to write your first book then? And when did you publish that?
So I published in October of 2020. So I had sort of made the decision to do that. I would say probably about, and because it was the pandemic, I can kind of remember those months, probably April. I was like, okay, let's just dip my toe in the water. Let's take a couple classes. My kids were home because, we went virtual. So my life just looked really different. I didn't have the time, and I didn't have the clients at that time to sort of keep my brain busy in a way. So I started taking classes at night after my kids were asleep, just to sort of really familiarize myself with the art of storytelling and how I wanted to interpret that, I guess. And this story just really like fell from my fingertips. I still say it's one of my, well, it's a first book. You always remember your first, right? Think it just sort of fell into my lap, and I had a lot of fun writing it. I didn't know all of the ways that this career could be intimidating or scary yet, if that makes sense. Like I was just like, yeah, let's do it. So it was really freeing in that way.
So, when did it switch? Because I always say there's a beautiful naivety to when you first step into this because you actually don't know what you're stepping into. And then when you're a couple of years down the track and you realize how large of a scale it is and all the things that you have to manage, you think, I do this to myself again? No, I'm kidding. But
I know.
when did you notice the snowball effect? When was the moment for you that you were like, oh, I'm a real author. There's a real demand for my books right now. This is bringing me income. When was that moment for you?
So I think it's a little tricky, because I think so. I first started writing darker Why Choose romance, and I got into TikTok fairly early. I was in there, I would say, probably with my first book. So back in October of 2020 or shortly into 2021. And I found a lot of success with it. It wasn't nearly as, big as it is now, but it was really fruitful. There was so many readers on there that I could connect with in a way I hadn't found at the time to connect with on Instagram. And so I think in a lot of wonderful ways, I was, this is going to sound terrible. I don't want to say I was bigger than I was, but I didn't realize how fast I would grow a readership, no matter how, I didn't even understand how I got 100 readers after 6 months or whatever it was. I was like, what, how does, I just didn't know. I was just out there doing silly TikTok videos and trying to not get banned because I was sharing spicy content, or you know what I mean? I was just having fun. And I think I was go, go, go. That's sort of part of my personality is I'm very determined and very driven, I guess. And it's sort of, I didn't realize how much stuff that comes with being an author as a full-time career versus like I'm just going to write a book and see what happens. Okay, okay, now this is now my job and this is my career and there's 1,000 other things that come along with that. And I love it, but I'm not great at everything. I don't know anybody who's great at everything. So I hit a pretty rough wall of burnout then. I had written 11 books in 2 years and I couldn't write anything or do anything for like 9 months. And it was really tough. And I think that was a really, really hard lesson for me to learn. I don't know how I got to this subject, but this is all kind of part of it, I think, I grew and it was wonderful and lovely. And I'm so forever indebted and grateful for my readers. But I didn't know how to manage my time. I didn't know how to manage my creativity. I didn't have a team around me then. And I didn't have even like an author circle of like trusted close friends to lean on or ask questions or send a SOS signal up. So that was really rough and that was hard for me to weather. Now I know that's a fairly common thing for a lot of writers to sort of encroach on burnout or have to sit in burnout for a while because just the very nature of this business is very fast paced. And excuse me, it takes a lot out of you. I willingly give it. Like I always joke, if anyone ever sees me on stories, I always post like at the end of a book, usually I'm crying. And my husband will take these candid pictures of me crying. And he's always like, why are you upset? You know what's going to happen. And I was like, I know, but the readers don't know. The readers don't know because I have a lot of cliffhangers or I leave it right till the very end, high suspense. And also just like saying farewell to these characters sometimes when I end a giant world, which a lot of my books are in a world. So it's just so rewarding, but I didn't know how much I needed to invest like of myself into this business until it was like too late.
And as you said, it is a common story. I definitely want us during this interview to talk about burnout. It's something that I advocate on here because personally,
Yeah.
I've done that multiple times, but also even if you've done it once, you're still tempted to do it twice because you don't know how to put those boundaries in. And when you are so passionate about this, and as you said, it's so fast moving, you're just trying to juggle the balls constantly. And then you have to have conversations with yourself to really prioritize your health first. But first of all, I want to say congratulations on your 4 year anniversary, which would have only been about a
Thank
month.
you.
Congrats.
Thank you.
I wonder too, something that I've noticed as well is this is again time difference and adaptability. So for example, I first published in 2014. So I'm basically the paint drying on the wall at this point. And it's been interesting to see all the trends shift. And one thing that I noticed is the authors who started their career during the pandemic, it was a different time. There was a different expectation. People were reading a lot then. And then they come into the pool when the world started sort of semi going back to normalish. People really struggled with that because they thought that that high demand was the normal. And then they started like going in on themselves a lot, thinking, is this me? Am I losing like popularity? Are people not wanting my books anymore? Is that something that you struggled with as well? Was it sort of adapting to the new normal? Like, I mean, everyone had to after COVID, but like that sort of reader expectation and how voracious they were.
Yeah, I think for me, it definitely was. So, my majority of my backlist is that Why Choose Romance. I love Why Choose. But I knew I was ready to make a change. I wasn't sure if I had a lot of those thoughts like, okay, is this me? Is it this market? And I think one of the wonderful things about being an author and being connected to so many authors, sort of behind the scenes of readers, is that there's a lot of places to like share information or tidbits or just lean on people. And I think that's so wonderful. I also think sometimes it can be misleading because someone is sharing an opinion like, oh, this trope is on the way out, or this is on the way out, or whatever it is. And it's really hard to gauge those things, I think, for anybody. But I knew So my current series is MF standalones. So I only have this is book two that comes out in a couple of days from when we're recording this. But my last series, I like to call it like a bridge. It bridges my backlist to my front list. It is a small town romantic suspense, but it's wide shoes. So it is sort of unique in that aspect. Um, and it's a trilogy. So my wide shoes is perhaps written different than some other wide shoes. I write slow burn. I write really like character heavy, but high suspense. So it feels like it's a one-on-one relationship, but also she has multiple boyfriends and sometimes they're related, sometimes they just are besties. So like it's different than just like a really fast burn multi-partner spicy scene, which I also love. I just don't write that. So I wanted to do an experiment and see. I was sort of clawing my way out of Burnout, and I didn't think I had a ton more of like wide shoe stories that were really speaking to me. And I was noticing this trend, and I thought, okay, well, I'm really looking for this type of book, and I feel like this is what the story is to me. So I wrote my Rosewood series, and that is the small town wide shoes. It is a little bit of its own. Like there's a lot of different niches and combos out there, but for my backlist, it sort of bridges. And I was hoping that it would carry my readers into this new direction if they wanted to come with me. I want everyone to come with me, but not everyone wants to leave wide shoes, and that's totally fine too. But that for me was sort of like testing the waters to see if this was a story that I could tell where I felt like I could tell as well as I could maybe tell my earlier books and have that same connection with those characters. And then after I was done with that, I thought, okay, I think I'm just going to do something crazy for me and write an MF standalone, right? Which is such a non crazy thing. And I'm like, I'm going to make it fake dating, but it's going to be second chance. And I had some friends that are like, babe, I love you, but that doesn't make sense. I'm like, just wait. I think it can make sense. So I have this sort of niche, I guess, or knack for like combining some little tropes or like micro tropes maybe that are maybe not as familiar as some other ones, but it seems to work enough for me, I should say.
Yeah, I love this. So, would you say then that you're okay? We'll talk about the elephant in the room then. We'll talk about burnout. I love it. And
Yeah.
9 months to recover, which you know what is sometimes pretty quick for people in burnout, to be honest. And but 9 months is still a really long, heavy time, especially when I'm assuming you were beating yourself up probably that entire time, thinking, why can't I write? Why can't I produce? And I always notice that around that 2 year mark is when authors start really dropping back on the pace because you're writing, you're so passionate about it. And that, I think it's about that 2 year mark when the body just gives and it's like, enough, I can't do this anymore. I want to hear about like what you did in that time to obviously bring yourself back, but it also kind of sounds like you experimenting with, as they call a passion project, that is something that is different to what you were used to writing, kind of help you find that passion again for it and bring you out of that burnout. Is that correct?
So I had written two series and then I didn't know where to go. I had this spin-off duet idea and it could have been like a whole new world, but I couldn't. I wrote the du I knew I had to write the duet, right? But before that, I had this, it's an outlier on my backlist, but it's one of my readers' favorite books of mine. And it's just a standalone apocalyptic why choose romance. It's an ode to my personal love affair with like those types of movies, like the disaster movies, the end of the world, not zombies, but like a volcano. Oh no, let's quick fall in love before we all maybe perish, those kind of stuff. And that was a total passion project. I didn't really expect to make a lot. I mean, I had mafia in my back. I had written nothing but mafia. And here's this just whoop, here you go. And I had the most fun at that point. I had the most fun writing that book because I didn't have a lot of expectations for it. I just did it because I didn't know it was burnout, but I felt like my edges feeling like crispy. You know, I was just feeling really like fried, and I wasn't um there was a lot more responsibility by that point that I didn't know how to weather, and I didn't have anyone to delegate to at that time. And so then I published that, and then I published the duet. And publishing the second book in the duet is was one of the hardest things I've done in this career. It was, and I feel bad about it because I love that story. I love those characters. It was the first character that came to me before even my first book because it's all in the same world. And I still struggle with feeling like maybe I didn't do that character justice because she deserved more, but I just didn't have it in me. And so once that published in that November, I think ironically, or not ironically, unfortunately, I was down with COVID then. My whole family got so through all through the holidays. And then honestly, the beginning of that next year, I cried a lot, because I didn't know what was wrong with me. I didn't know how to stop doing it. I didn't have a support system. And the couple of people that I did know in the industry, they didn't know, nobody has a lot of great, I don't want to say great advice because I'm sure people have great advice, but I didn't have any great advice for myself. No one I knew offered any advice. So I just did it was just a really anxious time for me because I am so driven that I'm of the mindset like if I'm not doing something, that's bad. Like I have to be doing something always, which is terrible. And it's not great for mental health or physical health, but we're working on it. And I have a treadmill now. So when I'm having those thoughts, I can just go watch Netflix on my treadmill. That's also a lot in my stories. So just it's a funny thing I do a lot. But I unfortunately, then in that 9 months, we unexpectedly lost my husband's grandfather, which we were very, very close to. So that I think sort of added another layer, like this grief component to burnout. And it was just really everything I could do to just like keep marketing and keep pushing this backlist, which had served me well. So I wasn't scared about that, but I was very scared about, oh my God, what if I never write again? What if I don't know how to do this. It was like I just could not figure it out. It's a very strange and alarming sensation.
One thing that I find interesting is when people are like, oh, I have writer's block. And I'm not saying it's not a real thing, but also part of me is like, is it writer's block or is it your body saying temporarily we need to have rest and peace because we're just too knackered? And I understand full-heartedly when you were saying that you can't not be doing anything. I am very much the same, and it is a problem. I mean, I don't know if you've ever done, we talk about it a little bit on here, but the Becca Symes, you do your Clifton Strengths. My
Yeah.
number one is
Oh,
Achiever.
yeah.
Do you have Achiever as well?
I think I'm a number 3 achiever. I'm a number 1 input, which means that I feel better when I gather things.
Yeah.
So whether it's information or Disney pins, which is one of my favorites, or books, much to my husband's like, pick a book off your shelf. We don't need to go to Barnes and Noble. And I'm like, but I like browsing, those types of things.
I love that. I was wondering when you were saying how busy you work, I was like, you have to have Achiever somewhere there.
Yeah.
But it's very tedious as well because although people give advice and be like, just slow down, just stop when you're not wired that way, you couldn't think of anything worse. You're just like, yeah, but even if I'm having a rest day, I'm still going to clean the entire house and do 15 errands
Yep.
and do this and that. And so it then makes it really difficult as well when you go from a traditional style job, whether it's like a 9 to 5 job, whatever it may be, you have limitations to a degree. You know that you get to pack up your stuff at 5 o'clock and you leave and you go home and you do your thing. When you are in this, it's all on you. And then you notice that the to-do list just becomes bigger and bigger. And so I think everyone gets to a point in their career, and hopefully they're at a point financially as well where they can delegate. And so I'm kind
Mm-hmm.
of curious, what are the things for you that you decided, you know what, this is not essential for me to do, or this is not my strength? And how did you go about finding the right people to be a part of that team for you?
Yeah, I think this year was really important for me to delegate. I will say that it is hard for me. I think it's hard for a lot of people, but I find it especially challenging because I do like that sense of control. I think that's just inherent in my personality. But I also think because at the end of the day, this is my business. And I'm a very face forward author. I'm all over all my socials. Not only chatting, but like my face is literally everywhere. So it was important for me to make sure that people I had on my team um, acted, like accordingly to like Penelope Black, the brand. And I will say that not everything's a home run, and there's no ill will about it, but you're just not going to mesh with every single person, no matter how hard you sort of like vet them or chat with them beforehand. It's hard until you're really in the thick of it to know if your styles mesh, or like, okay, I I'm always running late, so if there's a hard deadline, my PA knows this is terrible, but she'll tell me 2 days before is the deadline, and then okay, we get it that night and we're good to go. I think there's been some trial and error with finding it, and I do rely on some very close friends' recommendations, I will say as well, for certain things, because I know like there's inherent buy-in. If a very good friend of mine, if this person has passed all of their tests, they've been working with them for 6 months or a year, whatever it is, and they're wonderful. Okay, great. All right, let's have a conversation and see if we would be a good fit too. So this year I've done my best. I'm still working at it, right? To sort of hand off things that I don't have to do. Like my husband is really good at like helping me narrow it down, because if it's up to me, there's a list of 50 things that I have to do and only I can do. He's like, that's not right. Like you don't only have to do all those 50 things. So I have sort of delegated like newsletters for one. Newsletters is something I actually enjoy doing, but they just get pushed down on my list every time. Every time. So now I have hired someone who's wonderful, who I will just write. We meet once a month. We talk about what we're going to do. She has this amazing Airtable set up for me, and I'll write my intros. Like I sit down for an hour and I write every intro for the month's newsletters and get her any graphics that she needs. And then she just puts it all in and schedules it. I don't even have to worry about it. So that has been, I know it's like such a small thing, but for somebody who's trying to grow their newsletter too, like that has been so important to try and keep that consistent. And things like that are like graphics. Here's the thing. I love doing graphics. I do a lot of my own graphics. But it's nice, especially leading up to a release, to not have to do all of them. So it's the same woman, actually. Reagan is her name. She's wonderful. She does my newsletters. We meet. She says, okay, what are we loving? And she just makes templates. So, like, this is fairly easy. We already settled on templates for book one in this Avalon Fall series. So, we're just changing little things for each book. I love Canva. I have Canva teams, so everyone on my team can use it. And then I create like a brand palette for each book. So then all the photos are in there, the colors, the fonts. So anybody who needs anything, whether it's my PA who's doing stuff for Facebook, she can just grab all that from in there, or Reagan or anyone else. So like those little things are great. I gave up my Facebook group. Well, I didn't give it up, but my PA runs it entirely. I pop in and I hang out, but I don't have to worry about that, because my time for me is a little bit better served on Instagram. That's where I really like dig in, spend too much time talking to everybody. Like you catch me at the right mood and like 45 minutes goes by and somehow we're talking about Choco Tacos at Disneyland. You know what I mean? Like how did we even get there? I don't know, but I love it. So like those little things like has really helped me delegate, and just so I don't have to think about that. I work with an amazing PR company, so they take care of a lot, like even scheduling this interview. I just said, this is when I'm available. Can you please just make a schedule with whatever works? And she's like, perfect, here you go. That's so wonderful, because that's just one thing that I don't have to worry about anymore, you know? Same thing with like my ARC team. I'm involved, but I'm not the end all be all. There's other people also involved to help me, whether or, carry that burden. It's not a burden. I don't want to say burden, but to carry that weight, we'll say.
So, quick shout out to Valentine PR, who we love. I'm I'm kind of curious. You said earlier, straight from the get-go, when you started writing in April 2020, I think it was, that you immediately started doing writing courses and things like that. And after talking with you for half an hour, I realized you're probably very resourceful in the sense that you have probably done a lot of courses, you have probably downloaded a lot of programs, probably trialed and errored quite a few things. So I'm kind of curious as to what resources you would highly recommend to authors who are listening.
So I did do all those things. I like those things. Number one, input, right? So I like to gather a lot of information. I like to trial and error things. So I have a background in graphic design. And for a long time, I was making my own graphics. So I make my own covers. I always get scared to tell people because they're like, oh, girl. But I do make all
I'm
my own
sick of
covers.
you
If
just
you
being
don't like them,
no, they look great, but I'm like, can you still be so talented, please?
thank you. So I still do my covers in Photoshop, sometimes in Illustrator, but I would make my graphics in there. And it was just such a big, like, time commitment. I know it sounds sort of silly, but one of my biggest suggestions is investing in like Canva or even the Canva Pro when it, like, if there's a deal or something, I think it's worth it. Instagram Reels are amazing and wonderful. They push out to not your following. They push out to basically it's like 2% of your following on average, but your static posts, those push out to your people. So if your people in your community or the people that you're following or engaging with their content. So I always think about it like that. Like if you see like all those cute like posts that are like trending, like the Matchbox one, for example, those are almost always done in Canva. And it's super easy once you sort of get the hang of it. I think that's one of the best investments that I have like for my whole team is because we can all access anything. Not that everyone needs it for your team, but just to like, if you're going, okay, I don't know what content to make, everyone does such a good job, like whatever, I always recommend Canva. I write, okay, this is sort of silly. Have you heard of For the Words,
What is
the
it?
writing website? It's forthewords.com. So this is how I write. It's a game. It's like, so I have a subscription to it, and I don't know, this is a lot of people sprint with friends. I think it's wonderful, but I sprint when I battle monsters in this program with friends and we write together. I know. Okay, so hear me out. It is bite size. So you're defeating a monster by writing 100 words in 5 minutes or less, or 10 minutes, whatever it is. You have a monster, you have a word count, and you have a time limit. If you hit that word count in that time limit, you defeat it and like win prizes. And I don't even know what you win. The point is beating that monster sends my brain that little hit of like dopamine or serotonin or whatever it is, where I'm like, yes, I've got this going. Like, and I'm telling you, I write some of, it's not the cleanest, but I write some of my best stuff in my best sprints when I use this program. So it's not, I don't think it's free. I pay for it and I sprint with a couple friends. And I mean, I'm just like crushing these word count goals, which for me is very important because otherwise I can stare at a computer 6 hours out of the day, not at once. And I'm like, oh God, I've got 1,000 words here. Like that is not good. That feels like a drain on me mentally. So it's kind of about for me finding that balance. And if I can hit my word count goal in an hour or two doing this, it's worth the $5 a month I pay for it, or maybe it's 10, I don't know. Whatever it is, it's like a game changer for me. I know it's sort of a silly one, but don't sleep on For the Words, people. If you're like struggling, maybe sprinting with friends isn't like exactly for you, or you haven't found the right thing, but you love the idea of it, you can write solo or you can sprint with anybody or friends. I love it.
I love it. I'm like, so you're literally slaying as you're writing. I'm like, yeah,
Yes.
I get it.
Yes.
I'm a nerd, so I love this. I absolutely love this. I am a little bit curious as to how you felt doing, or should I say, writing multi-genre, because I feel like there's two distinct authors. There's the one that's like, I must get multiple pen names because it's gonna challenge the branding, and it used to be an issue with algorithm on Amazon and such, not so
Mhm.
much anymore. Or there's the author, and I'm in this category, is like, fuck it. I don't have time to do multiple. I'm gonna write whatever my little heart wants. And so were you kind of nervous about writing those multiple genres under the one name and whether it wouldn't transition over your current readers?
Yeah, I think that's why I kind of did my last series, which is the Rosewood series. I call it like a stepping stone or a bridge. It was like my attempt to hopefully bring my readers where I felt like I was going to go, which where I ended up going, to just like a more interconnected standalones with just an MF dynamic, instead of the why choose. And I'm not saying I'll never write why choose again. I just don't have any immediate plans for it. I mean, who knows? Maybe a spicy little novella will come up once again. Who's to say? But I think if I would have like jumped to fantasy and then planned to come back to contemporary or romantasy or something, I might have been a little bit more hesitant. But because I felt like I could try and bring most of them with me by going from dark romance to just a small town romantic suspense. My Rosewood series has like a former 1%er motorcycle club. So like they definitely cross the line back in the story, but they're not nearly as dark as my previous series. And then hopefully they would come with me
Yeah.
to this now new series, which is not dark at all. It's definitely suspenseful, but there's no more, unaliving like there was in my previous books. So not as in your face, at least I'll say.
I like the strategy in this as well though, because you're already having readers be invested by introducing to whether that be that particular club or those particular characters. So that is your connection. It's not like you had just been like, here is a high-end fantasy with Fae, and then here is Mafia, and they have no connection, because I feel like that's often when
Right.
there can be disconnect with readers. But also, some authors pull it off. Like some authors will have their readers will read every single thing they write, and I think that's amazing. And then you have other authors who struggle with the in between. So I'm always curious to see how it's worked because everyone's journey is different, which I love.
I don't think I could pull off two pen names either, just because of the amount of time I invest into this pen name. I just don't think I physically have that kind of time in the day. And because I do like to be active on my socials, I know not everyone manages their own socials, and that's totally fine. I think you do what is good for you at that moment. But I like, like, so that's why I always say when you tag me in a bad review or you send me like a not nice DM, like that's actually me reading it. There's no middleman to sort of weed this out. Like this is actually me. So if that was your intention, congratulations. But like just an FYI, because I do like interacting with readers. I mean, that's where I feel like I'm the most active, and I can like, it's where I feel the most community, I'll say, with readers and just the bookish community in general. So I don't think I could physically handle two different pen names.
I'm the same. I don't have the time or capacity for it.
Yeah.
I want to touch actually on what you just said then, which was when people are tagging you in awful reviews or when they're sending you messages. Unfortunately, with social media, it exposes us and it makes us very accessible. And so it's fantastic when we have our readers and our awesome tribe. But then, how do you handle when you get people that are not that person, when they are vicious and they're mean? And what are some of the steps that you've put in place so you don't take it so personally?
I think I've gotten better in the sense that, in terms of taking it personally. Um, I'm not gonna lie, I am a very sensitive person. I always feel silly saying this because, like, who isn't sensitive? I feel like everybody is. And I think just this inherent nature of being an author, like I said earlier, just like creating this thing that you spend so many sleepless nights and so much of your time, like committing to telling this story or daydreaming about these characters like they're real people. You send it off into the world and you hope that it's met well and received well. And intellectually, I know not every book is for every person. I mean, as a human, I understand. As a reader, I understand it. You know, I'm not a nonfiction reader. They're not for me, and that's okay. So intellectually, I get that, but emotionally, I don't get that. You know, emotionally, it's hard for me. It's not that I begrudge anybody for having like, oh, this a book I wrote didn't connect with you, you didn't like it, or the characters or whatever. Like that's totally fine. I just don't need to see it. And unfortunately, one of the wonders of the world is the algorithm, right? So unfortunately, even if I'm not tagged, occasionally I will see things where I mentioned just because that is how, you know, the algorithm is like the Wizard of Oz. I don't really get it. Like something's happening behind the screens here. One day it'll be revealed and maybe it'll be Jeff Goldblum. Who knows? I just saw Wicked a couple days ago with my daughter. But for now, I just tried to like blow it off. Sometimes if they exceptionally hurt my feelings, I'll just tell my group chat. A lot of times it's sort of silly, you know, and it's like, okay, well, they don't like fake dating. Well, this book is fake dating. So I'm really sorry, but this is probably just not the book for you. And that's okay. Like that kind of stuff, it's really easy for me to not take personally because it's not really about me. But I'm not perfect. And sometimes they hurt my feelings. So I just will quietly remove a tag if it's like a negative review. Um, that's pretty much it. I'm not very confrontational just by nature, and it makes me sweaty and nervous, and I just will like, okay, thank you for reading, bye, you know, like that's pretty much it. I do try to just still be really polite, and I, you know, if someone DMs me about it, now if somebody, there's only been a handful of times where I've ever received like really just sort of nasty DMs. I don't even engage. Or, you know, if your reel gets kicked out of Bookstagram and it goes, or even on Facebook and it goes wide and it's just gross, rude comments, I just block and delete. I don't engage anymore. It doesn't serve me. I don't want to train the algorithm like this is something that needs to be seen by myself. So that kind of stuff I don't take personal at all. And I don't go on Goodreads. So that is the best way for me. Goodreads is not really a space for me. That's why I bless my art team, because they just text me like, hey gal, by the way, you still have the temporary cover on Goodreads for your book that's releasing in 2 days. And I'm like, cool. That's yeah. So
You just
you know,
reminded me, I think I need to
delegating.
change mine. Thank you. I'm like, I think I'm just gonna quickly write that down right now. Goodreads.
Right?
I was like, again, all the balls that we must
I
handle.
know.
Are you a plotter or a pantser, by the way? What's your writing process?
I'm a hybrid.
Okay.
So my brain feels good when I have at least a general, more than a general outline, for sure. I have this like cutie little like flowchart. I write it down on paper because it helps. It's like, I'm gonna date myself, but back when I was in like college and like stuff, I wrote a lot of notes by hand because my laptop was very expensive at the time, you know, and it was just awkward and nope, not a lot of people did it. And so it helped me retain the knowledge. So I still think my brain can sort of make sense of things. Um, I write it out just like on a piece of my daughter's, like, it's not construction paper, but like it's thicker. I like that material. And it sort of looks like a graph chart. And then I have like the little ticks in it and then plot everything out. So I like to plot out. It gets fuller the longer I'm writing, but before I start writing anything, I usually do like, okay, these scenes are really on my mind. I know they have to be in there to either hit these tropes that these characters are representing or to make their lives miserable, because that's what we like to do, is make them unhappy until they're happy, or snatch it away at the end. And then I still give myself freedom to sort of see what happens as I go. Sometimes it changes. The huge points usually don't change, but some of the smaller plot points do. I've tried to be a pantser. I know some of my friends are wildly successful with it. I am not. It is again one of those things where I sit at a computer for 6 hours and it's like 1,000 words, and I'm like, I don't like any of this. This all has to go. So it's easier for me. I know what I'm going to write. I think about it while I'm like doing the dishes or walking my dog. And then I'm like, okay, when I sit down to write, I can sort of just fly, generally speaking. That's my favorite way to write. When I'm under a deadline, it's a little less loosey goosey and a little more, you know,
Get in there and get it done.
yeah, yeah.
It's not my favorite question to ask. What is the goal? What is the big dream that you were chasing for your career? And the bigger, the better.
I don't know. My husband and I talk about this all the time because he is the big picture guy. I am not. I know it sounds so weird and it sounds like a non-answer. It's not. It's just, I mean, I think the idea, there's like ideas of big goals. Like, I think it would be so wonderful to have like a trad paperback deal. I would cry to see my books in every Target or Barnes and Noble or whatever. I think that would be so wonderful. And I think that's definitely a goal, but I don't know that I don't know how to work toward that goal, if that makes sense. And I think that's just the way my brain works. Like, I'm sure there are people out there who are like, okay, this is what you have to do. I just don't know what it is. And my plate is so wonderfully full right now. My kids are young-ish that I don't have the time to add in one more thing about like, okay, how do I achieve this right now? And then I kind of, like everybody, I think, fall victim to seeing what some of my friends or other people, other incredible women in the industry are just slaying it left and right. And so I'm going, oh, dang God, that's so wonderful for them. And how do I get that? And I would love to be there. And like, so happy for them. And also, how can I get myself something similar? And I think everyone does that, right? But I also recognize that I have only been publishing for 4 years. A lot of these people have been in it for far longer, have a lot more expertise and knowledge under their belt. And in a lot of ways, I still feel like I'm winging it half the time where I'm like, I don't know. I'm doing the best I can. I think for me, this was a big goal though, switching to do interconnected MF standalones. And I only preface the MF because I do have a wide shoes backlist. Like, this was a goal for me. I didn't know if I could bring readers along the ride with me. And I didn't know, I know it sounds so silly, but I didn't know if I could write a story with just one love interest, that I'd only written the multiple ones. So I think that this is, writing this series is really opened my eyes. And I've just had a lot of, God, I've had so much fun writing these like small, silly moments between these characters that I maybe didn't have time in the story to write before, or they looked different because they were never, they weren't truly alone a lot. They were with other people. So I know that was like a non-answer. I don't know that I have a better one.
Honestly, it was a great answer, and it's a reason why I absolutely love this channel so much is because as you're saying, you do have goals, but you just don't yet know how to get to them. And that is the exciting part about this journey. And this is why I love getting authors on here because there are authors who they've got to, the traditional publisher or the movie deals and things like that. And it's so interesting seeing their step by step as to how they got there. And it looks different for
Mm-hmm.
everyone. So I'm just like, cool, what path are you gonna place next? Like in a couple of years, you'll probably have those things. And I'll be like, cool, how did it go for you? Because everyone's different.
Yeah.
I do have a segment called Speed Dating with an Author. I've lit a candle, I've
Okay.
created opinions. Um, but it's basically five rapid questions. Are you ready?
Okay, I'm ready.
Let's go. What is the clumsiest moment you've ever had?
Oh God. Okay. I've got a lot. So this is terrible, right? The most recent one was I was walking out of my garage and I wasn't paying attention and I walked into my garage door as it was opening and just hit me right here. And the stupidest part about it, like I hit the deck and I looked around and I thought someone threw something and hit me. You know what? Like I couldn't I just couldn't. I was like, what happened? So silly. So silly. That's not the first time I've done that either. I've done that in almost every single house I've lived at. That's probably says more about me. That's a pretty good one though.
He did not write that day.
I did not. No. I was like, okay, I'm just gonna go watch Netflix or something for a while. I don't know what's happening.
I love that. Then what would you say the three words that best describe you are?
Oh gosh, this is a tough one. Okay. I'd say driven for sure. Um, I'm emotional. Is that a good word? That's probably I'm emotional. Like every part of writing a book is emotional. Also, my kids do this thing where they look at me during a movie or something to see if I'm crying. My daughter clocked all 5 times I cried at Wicked. She's 9. This is a learned behavior for her to like look now. And she's like, "Are you crying again? Are you crying? Why are you crying?" Like, because it's sad and she has no friends and now she has a friend. And she's like, "So you're crying because she has a friend now?" Or so I would say I'm emotional. I cry often for good things, not just bad things. And this is going to sound silly, but mother. I know it's a really big part of my identity. My last series, Rosewood, I had a theme of motherhood throughout the whole series. And it was really important to me in almost every single book I've ever written, or every series, I should say, there is a theme about motherhood and the different ways that people experience it and the different types of ways they've been mothered and they then mother. And I think that there's not, in my life, there hasn't been enough exploration about that and the way women can show up for other women and in sort of a nurturing and mothering way that is really beautiful and wonderful. And I don't think it's celebrated enough.
Do you know one thing? I love that answer because I think that quite often when we start writing, we don't actually understand what we're necessarily writing or what the clear messages are. And then once you've started writing a couple books, you start to get a feel. And what I've noticed with a lot of authors is usually there is one value every single time in a book. And it took me years to realize, like for myself, mine is I always have very strong women, but there I like to find strength and vulnerability because a lot of these women can be cold or they can be a certain way and it can be
Mm-hmm.
because of experiences that have happened to them and that there is beauty and strength and vulnerability very similar to how you're exploring the different ways of nurturing and mothering and things like that. I just always find it, yeah, I find it fascinating how everyone has that one
Me
value
too.
they really try to give their readership. And I think that's beautiful. So thank you for sharing that as well.
Yeah.
What is the song that best describes you?
Oh gosh. Oh, this one really puts me on the spot. I don't know. So I have this thing, I'm sure I know a lot of authors do it, but I like ride or die playlists for my books. My readers go real excited for it. And each book has like a song that not necessarily a theme song, but like the overarching. Like my last book, Broken Pact, the song was The Kill by 30 Seconds to Mars, and it just really encompasses that book. This book is a Taylor Swift song, so that these playlists become like my entire personality for those couple of months while I'm writing. And the Taylor Swift song is "Who's Afraid of Little Old Me," and I know you can't tell because I'm sitting down. I'm only 5'2". Everyone is genuinely surprised when they see me at signings, or they see over me first before they realize it's me, because I'm not very tall. But I loved this song for this book. I loved this song. It just really speaks to me about like underestimating, being underestimated. And also this, I think, again, because it goes back to this theory of like girlhood and womanhood and motherhood and all these things. And even if you're not a traditional mother, just that sort of nurturing element. And society, these communities and stuff, we are shaped by them, whether or not we know what's happening, and or if we want to be shaped by them. And there's a line in the song where it's like, you wouldn't last an hour in the asylum where they made me. And I think it's just so like poignant and profound in a way that, I mean, it's a great like song, right? It's got a good beat and stuff, but like that line just forever sticks out to me. And it makes it sound like I had some like crazy childhood. I didn't. I just think like being raised in this society, you don't know how it shapes you until you're, an adult. And then you go, okay, well, maybe now I have some things to explore, or, diving into books. I always say that there's no bad time to start reading. Some people pick up a book when they're in college, like a romance book specifically. Some people pick up their romance books in their 50s, or they take a break because they're too busy being moms and working at 9 to 5 and keeping the house and all these other things and having a really busy social life. And all these things are valid and important. But I think it's also just like this wonderfully untouched part of living, is that romance community, and or just experiencing that romance. So I think that song would be, this is not a fast answer. I
No,
told you I'm so chatty, but I think this is part of it. Like, this is what I'm feeling right now. Like, my daughter and I were screaming the lyrics the other day when we were singing, and just seeing that, like, well, you should be afraid of me, as her thing, because I'm strong and I'm powerful. And I think that it's like a little battle cry.
yeah, I love it. That was a good answer. I love that. So, who has been, you can only choose one as well, who has been your favorite character to write and why?
I don't know if I have a favorite. I really don't. I think there's definitely favorite parts of every character. And when I was writing Why Choose, I never had a favorite. I would definitely have a favorite, like whoever, if they're everyone's in a scene, who is that scene impacting the most? That's probably my favorite. Like whose heart is being ripped out with jealousy or sadness or love. Like, that's my favorite, right? I think for sure there's parts of me in every single heroine I've ever written. Just because I think, well, when I first started, I didn't really know any better. So I probably took more pieces of me in my very first book just because it was familiar. And I think there's definitely parts of me in my book that's releasing in a couple days, Forsaken Oath. Eloise is an older sister, and there is some pretty big circumstances that leave her taking care of her two younger sisters. And I dedicated this book. I'm so proud of this dedication, but it's to a couple different things. And one of them is like to the latchkey kids. I don't know if you know. So, like, I was a latchkey kid. So it's basically this term given to kids who grew up in like the 80s and the 90s, who went home after school, let themselves in, like their parents were at work, took care of their younger siblings, and kind of became this like parental figure until mom and or dad or whoever came home from work. And so it was like placing a lot of responsibility on an 11-year-old or 12-year-old's head. And I am the oldest of three. And so I felt that responsibility in the way that sort of carried over into adulthood, for the eldest daughters too. Like, that's a thing in there that I think a lot of readers sort of are resonating with. So that's kind of important to have those themes in there. And I hope that, they sort of see themselves in her.
What is a unique talent or skill set that you have that not a lot of people know about?
Oh, okay. Here's a unique, it's not a talent or a skill, but it's unique and it's a little creepy. Does this qualify? So I sleep with my eyes open. They're not wide open, but they're halfway open. Just don't know why. It freaks my husband out. It freaks my kids out. They know it now, but they're always like, "Are you awake? What's happening?" If I answer, obviously I'm awake. If I'm not, I'm not. Which is kind of funny. Which makes everyone laugh. And I guess maybe it's not very unique, but I have a musical theater background. So I have what it's like tonal pitch hearing. So I can hear something and like match it vocally very easily. Um, it's not really, I don't know. It's just this little fun quirk that's great for like karaoke, right?
It's awesome though. And also, look, I'm not completely against the whole sleeping with your eyes half open. You're the first who's
It's
ever said that on here, so definitely caught me off guard, but also kind of digging it. Love the creeper vibe. Let's go. But
it's
that's
so weird.
incredible that you can match tones though as well.
Yeah, it's fun. It's great when I'm doing the car karaoke with my daughter. My son, he doesn't really care about Taylor Swift anymore. That's okay.
I have had so much fun today, Penelope. Let us know, where do we find you, what's coming out, and everything that we need to know.
I had the best time chatting. First of all, we surely have to do this again. This has just been a blast. So I am super active on socials. The best place to find me is Instagram. So it's just author Penelope Black. I'm also on TikTok and then Facebook as well. And you can always email me. I always say, like, my DMs are always open, my email's open. Like, nothing gives me more joy than getting reader updates, like live updates as you're reading. Even if it's like a random sentence or I want to throw my Kindle at you, I probably know where you're at. And it just like brings me a lot of joy. So I always invite anybody to slide into my DMs. And maybe when you're reading Forsaken Oath, which is going to be my next release, or my newest release, you might want to slide into. So that will be available on Amazon in the gorgeous couple cover for the ebook and paperback, and then a discreet cover if you're just like that sort of illustrated vibe, and non-people in paperback as well.
Amazing. Well, I'm so excited. When this releases, the book would have been out for about 3 or 4 weeks. But I already know it's going to hit it out of the park. So congratulations on the release, and I hope you don't
Thank you.
self-upload tomorrow when it does.
Thank you. I am to celebrate. I'm reading a book. It's the most like cliche romance author thing ever. My husband's like, "Oh, you started a book? That's funny because you finished a book. Your tradition."
I love that though. We all have to celebrate and have our own traditions, don't we?
Yes, we do.
All right, guys. Well, we're going to love you and leave you, and we'll see you next episode. Bye, guys.
Bye.